Hello guys, it's John here, today we're doing a little bit of a discussion. This time, I want to talk about the Hasbro variants for Beyblade X. As of right now, we have 2 waves of them, each wave had 4, so we have 8 total. And I just want to talk about them. I made a video a few months ago talking about my first impressions on Hasbro Beyblade X, and of course at the time there were only 4 out, but now I have 8. And in that video I talked about a lot of things, and the variants were a part of that. However, there's a couple problems with that video. First up, I didn't really get into the variants very much. I more so just talked about Beyblade X itself from Hasbro, and I kind of just quickly swept the variants under the rug as, well, variants that you don't have to buy. I also felt like the video was poorly paced, and I know that the video got positive reception, but to me personally, that was probably the worst video I've made this year. I really didn't like it. I probably should have just scrapped it and tried again, but I didn't, so I think some of the stuff in that video is okay, but this part wasn't, so I want to make a video dedicated to variants entirely. So with that said, I guess the first thing we could do is talk about the actual, blade comparisons, and just talk about kind of, how these are, well, variants. They're not unique. They're based on other Beys. So of course some of these are, older than others, but of course the kind of oldest of the bunch, and I'm going to move these and we'll talk about them as they come up, but of course, Tusk, I'm using the Japanese style names. Some of them are different than what I've said in the past, because I feel like every week I just realize one of the names is off or something, but anyway. So Tusk is based on Hellsaith, so of course, again, a variant of one of the first Beys. And then another early one here is Croc Crunch. Yeah, it's not Croc Bite, it's Croc Crunch. And this is based on Shark Edge, pretty obvious based on the designs. And one thing I do like is that they do tend to use like nice engravings here. Like this is clearly based on like a crocodile right here, which is very cool. So the engravings are nice. Like they definitely do some work on these, but again, conceptually they are just the same idea. They can be better sometimes based on the shape and stuff. We'll come back to competitive stuff in a little bit. I'm not big on competitive, but I want to at least talk a little bit about it. Anyway. We also have a Leon Claw retool here with Samurai Steel. Pretty self-explanatory. Then we have probably one of the more notable ones here is Terra Swing, and according to the customized set that we're getting, this name is Terra Swing. I had it as Terra Talon first, then Terra Stroke, but apparently it's Terra Swing. Again, I feel like these names always just change depending on what Takatomi wants to do, but anyway. This is a retool of Viper Tail, and I feel like it is notably pretty different. Like, yeah, you still have these parts here that come down, but I don't know, I feel like it's overall a different enough shape to where it almost just looks like a completely unique blade. The other ones were clear, like Croc Crunch is like, that's Shark Edge, like, you can't debate that. I mean, this still has like enough of a Leon Claw look. This one's pretty good. It's still like kind of Hellsaith-esque, but I think there's enough differences to make it look unique, but again, it still is tied a little bit to it. This one I feel like is very, very different than Viper Tail. Again, if I was just to look at this, I would not associate it with that. Maybe Tusk also gets away with it, but this one I feel like especially does well. Now, a big problem here is Rhino Horn, because it has 2 variants. But both of these are Rhino Horn variants, so... First one was Shinobi Knife. It has different detailing and stuff, but I think it is still kind of clearly modeled after Rhino Horn. And then, of course, we got Bear Scratch as well, and I think this one, I feel like the shape is almost a little bit more obvious, but I think the engravings are much better. And again, you can see, like, these bear, type of, engravings, which is very cool. I think the engravings are much better. Yeah, shape-wise, it's very, very much Rhino Horn. Moving past that, we also have Tyrian Aurora, based on Phoenix Swing. I think, the shape here, I think these parts are much different. Like, the contact points themselves are different, which is good. But again, in terms of shape, this is pretty clearly a Phoenix Swing retool. And lastly, we have Kong Yell. This one, I mean, this is actually probably the most different. Like, I would not associate this with Wyvern Gale, if I'm being honest. Well, it might not be a good thing because these sides here are like very thin, but yeah. I don't immediately associate it with Wyverngale, which is a good thing, but yeah. So some of the variants are like fairly different, but yeah, I mean they're not all great. I mean again, like as much as I like Croc Crunch, it might be my favorite of the remakes, but at the same time, like this shape, I mean, come on, that is so clearly Shark Edge. Aside from that, like the actual parts of these bays, I don't like at all. I think the parts here are actually a bigger problem because like okay, if you want to do variants, right? Now, let me just put this on screen for now. But anyway, if you want to do variants of blades, to have these exclusives that are, they're kind of just glorified recolors, if we're being honest. I think you can get away with that. I would prefer if they, change them a bit more, but still, whatever. I mean, some are fine. Like I already mentioned, like, I think Terra Swing's, like, pretty okay, but, you have Croc Crunch, and while some people say it's like a better Shark Edge in some ways, at the same time, I do just wish that it was, you know, different, at least to some extent. It'd be nice. Anyway. But if you want to make these variants interesting, I think the part selection needs to be better. Let's go through, all the different parts that we have here. So let's see if you notice any patterns. So first up, we had Mammotusk. This uses 360 taper, alright, to very early and, well, basic parts. So, okay. After that, we have Shinobi Knife, 480 High Needle. High Needle, it's a little bit different. And then 480, I mean, it's just kind of another early part, but sure. Alright, Samurai Steel, 480 Taper. Already seen both of these parts. Alright, what about Terra Swing? 380 Ball. Well, it's different, but again, these are still, well, day one parts. Alright, how about Bear Scratch? 360 Spike. Well, Spike's different, but it is tied to Rhino Horn. That was Rhino Horn's original bit, but then, of course, 360 is just, well, a day one part. Alright, Croc Crunch. 360 low flat. This is literally just Shark Edge's combo. Like, exact. Speaking of, Tyranno Roar, 960 gear flat. While these are newer parts, again, it's the same ratchet and bit that Phoenix Swing had. This is based on. And also, Calling Yell, 360 Gear Ball. 360 is a day one part, and Gear Ball, while newer, much newer in fact, well, it's the same bit that Wyverngale had. So all these bays either basically use day one parts, or it's the same part that the original had. The only exception to this rule is Shinobi Knife, which uses High Needle, an August 2023 part from Night Lance, which, well, it came out a month after the original, so it is newer. That's nice, I guess. It's kind of my problem here, is that I feel like these bays should use different parts. And I know Beyblade X is still newer in Hasbro, but 560 and 580 have existed. You could at least give a couple of them here, like one or two of these bays could add, a 5-sided ratchet, at least from Wave 2, give, like, one bay a 5-sided ratchet. I know we got 960, but again, same part that Phoenix Wing had. And that's the other thing, like, I don't like when these bays reuse the parts that the original had. So, my idea here is, like, I can understand in some cases. Like, I think, obviously, something like, Croc Crunch, like, even if you change up this design a bit more, it's still going to be like an upper attack kind of bay. So having a low flat, I think, can make sense, and I think it's tied heavily enough to a bay like that to where I can understand why they would keep it. But, bays like or Tyranno. It's an attack blade, sure, but, like, did it need 960 gear flat? I don't think it did. I'm honestly fine with 960 purely because, like, yeah, it is the same part Phoenix Wing had, but it's the only non-Day 1 ratchet we've ever gotten from a Hasbro variant, so I'm not too mad about it. But, like, do we need the gear flat? I feel like we kind of don't. Why not throw it on something else? Throw it on, like, I don't know, taper. Just do something a little different. Have it, like, it be a slower attacker. Or you could throw on, like, ball if you want, just to see how it does. Just make something weird. Just try something different. Try to give a different identity to this bay. Again, if you use something like a ball, I don't necessarily know if that's going to be as good as using sand gear flat. It probably won't be. But again, it gives it its own identity. Or even throw it on point. Point could be interesting. Or again, taper, just to have it be a slower moving, bay. Try to give it a more unique identity. Or even for something like, what's another good example here? Something like, Terra Swing. I do think this is a better stamina blade than something like Viper Tail, honestly. It feels a little more smooth. But still, you have these like attack points here, right? You still do have these points here that you can definitely see, they can attack, right? So why not throw this thing, it's, higher up, or should be higher up for, these points. Why not keep 380? That's a fine choice. Instead of ball, which is just, kind of like orb, has a similar identity to Viper Tail, why not give it taper? Why not let it be a little more chaotic? Try something new. Give this bay its own sort of identity. Whereas instead it just feels like an alternate Viper Tail, because, 380, 580, both, tall ratchets with, good burst resistance, which is probably a good thing. But Ball and Orb, similar concepts, try something new. That's what I want to see. I want them to try different parts, I wish they would move away from day one parts, at least, to some extent. And also try not to, have the same parts. And again, in some cases that makes sense. I think like 960 or low flat do make sense on their respective bays. But I think for the most part you should be trying to change them up further. The blades are one thing I think you could do. Like, I think bays like Terra Swing are fine. It's just some bays like, Samurai Steel, Croc Crunch, both of the Rhino variants, I think could have used a little bit more work. Just a little bit, but still. I just think making these bays a little more unique, even if it's just based on part choices, would be a great thing to see. One other downside of these is that a lot of them tend to just straight up be lighter than their counterparts. I know this is especially a problem in Wave 2. Like, I know Bear Scratch is just straight up lighter than Rhino Horn by like 2 grams. It's also lighter than Shinobi Knife from what I've seen. Or like how Tyranno Roar is like almost 2 grams lighter than Phoenix Wing, which, I mean, that kind of sucks, honestly. So yeah. I'm not necessarily saying that like having them be lighter automatically makes them worse. But, because some of them can have better shapes, but I still just feel like it's unnecessary a lot of the time. Like, yeah, if you make the shape a lot better, I can understand maybe lowering the weight a little bit to try and compensate, but, like, Rhino Horn sucks. Bear Scratch does not need to be 2 grams lighter than Rhino Horn. Like, it just straight up doesn't need to be like that. So I disagree with making them lighter. I think it's a bad change overall. Now, another thing I want to address with these bays is that I said that in my previous video how I was like, oh, well, these are just variants. So if you don't want them, it's fine. They're just variants. They're there if you want to get them. Otherwise, you could just kind of skip them. I disagree with that statement kind of because what I said, I think you can make these bays more interesting. Like, again, if you give them unique identities, try and, again, make the blades at least a little bit different enough just to try and, make it to where, like, you won't immediately associate, like, oh, this blade is clearly this blade. Like, at least you'll look for a second, like, wait, what is this? Oh, it's that. I think that's better. And again, try to change up the parts enough to where they're not just repeating concepts. I think that's a big thing that they haven't done very well with. I think these bays are just too similar to, previous ones. Try and make them different to some degree. It doesn't have to be crazy, but just try and give them a little bit of their own identity. In some cases, I kind of understand, like, again, with Croc Crunch, that one I feel like it's hyper-specific to just being, like a low attacker, so, I mean, you could have thrown like 560 on it or something, I guess, but yeah, that one's a little bit harder to deal with, I think. But some of these, they don't need to be close to what they originally were. Just make it a little bit crazier, just for the hell of it. Try and justify why these aren't just glorified recolors. Why should you want this supposed, new motif? Even if they are just variants, try and sell them better. I think that's a much better plan. And well, yes, you can say that they're just variants, you could skip them if you want. I think that you could say that for like anything. You could say that for even mainline Beys, like, oh, if you don't really like this Bey, you could just skip it, you don't have to buy it, which is true. But if you're trying to make a new motif, I think any Bey should be, you know, interesting. Even recolors, I think making good recolors, trying to give them at least, you know, okay combos, I think is important. Try to sell these better. I think just saying that they're, you know, just variants and that's all there is to it was a stupid thing to say in the past. So I wanted to kind of say that, yeah, you can kind of apply it to a lot of things. They should just, I think it'd just be better if they try to make these stand out on their own a little bit more, even if they don't put a ton of effort into the blades, you know, like always not further effort from what they've already changed, but at least using the ratchet and bits, even if they're pre-existing, just to try and make them have their own identity. So that said, let me just start lining these up as I talk, I guess, but are these actually worthwhile? Are these worth buying? In my opinion, as of right now, I'm going to say generally no. I think they're cool. If you're trying to collect everything, I think, yeah, these are probably worthwhile. But in a lot of instances, I kind of don't think they're all that great, honestly. Again, they kind of are just variants, and they don't do a whole lot else as of right now. So if there's one that you like or something, it's not bad to pick up. But and maybe if you're like a competitive person and one of them happens to be better, then yeah, that could be a reason to buy one of these. But outside of that, like, I don't think these are particularly worth it, if I'm being honest, because again, they just have not done enough to justify being different, I feel. So yeah, I don't necessarily believe that these are worthwhile as of right now. But again, I do hope that over time, maybe these can get a little bit better. That would just be great. It'd be really, really nice to see that. But as of right now, I'm not too big on how they're handling them. So are they worth it? Generally, no, but it's questionable. The only thing is, if they keep releasing a lot of these, I think they're going to be less and less worthwhile, because if they're releasing 4 per wave, it's like, that's a lot of times to rebuy effectively the same Bey. If they're not changing up the blade enough, they're not really doing much for the parts, and they're clearly not against reusing the same base blade for multiple retools, like we've seen Rhino Horn be used as the basis for both Shinobi Knife and Bear Scratch, so I don't like that at all. I don't think they should reuse the same Bey, like, ever. I don't think that should be a thing. One's enough. Unless they have a super specific, you know, idea to make them different, I don't think they should do that. And both of those clearly are not different enough. They're both using defense bits. You could have maybe thrown one on like an attack bit to see what it does or something, and that could be interesting, but it'd probably have to be like the first variant. Like after that, like a second one, why would you even need that? I don't particularly agree with that. So I guess the last thing is, will I keep buying these? I am conflicted, honestly. I want to, because I like having all the Beys, I like having all the motifs, but there's just a lot of them, man. Like, 4 per wave for the first 2 waves is a lot to buy. I mean, the first wave you had 2 boosters, which are like $8 each, a 2-pack, which is what, like $15, and then you had the big, like, $50 set, so, I mean, let me just do some quick math in my head. That's what, like about $80, roughly. I mean, that's not cheap for a wave of exclusives, not at all. I know you know, get the Stadium, the launchers, you know, 2 extra Beys, technically, that I already had, but, you know, that's quite a bit of money to spend on 4 glorified recolors, if we're being honest. You know, I don't particularly like that. And 80 is generous, it's slightly more, plus I'm not accounting for tax either, so yeah. But for Wave 2, much more tolerable, which is just 2 packs and then the 2 boosters, but still, that's like about $45-ish, a little bit over 50 with tax. Again, for 4 glorified recolors, I probably could have skipped out on. So, if they keep doing this many per wave, I can't guarantee that I'm going to stick with these, because again, that's just a lot of extra money to spend. Like, Beyblade's already kind of annoying to keep up with at times, because again, they sometimes release some big sets and stuff, but yeah, these are not Beys that I would prioritize if I'm, you know, trying to not spend stupid amounts of money on Beyblade. I mean, I already do, but, you know, like, making it even worse. Like, I might cut these out at some point. I'm not gonna lie. I'll probably at least get the first year of them, so like waves 3 and 4, but after that I might not. However, if they maybe just slow down, maybe just gives like, you know, 1 or 2 per wave, maybe 4 every now and again, but still. If it's just going to be a flat rate of 4, I don't think it will be, but if it is, then I'm probably dropping off after the first year. But if they can get this under control, stop making so damn many of them, I will keep buying them, because they're interesting to get at least to check out. But yeah, there's a few too many, I think, especially because they aren't doing anything interesting with them at all. Now, if you start giving them a little bit more of their own identity, even if you are just doing, you know, retooling blades, you're just doing a better job with combo making to make different concepts, because you can do that. I mean, different blades can do different things. They don't have to be locked to the same combo that we've had. So, if you start doing that, then maybe I will be more willing to buy them and more happy about it. But as of right now, I'm on the fence a little bit. I probably will continue. Just saying, I probably will be. But if these are just getting like a ton of them, they just keep releasing them, they're not doing anything interesting, then I might stop. But yeah. I already have said no to the collab Beys. I don't care about the collab Beys. I have no interest in Transformers or Star Wars. As a kid I did a little bit, but nowadays I don't at all. I've never seen a Marvel movie in my life, so I have zero interest in those Beys. The collab Beys, if there's something that they collab with that I'm like really interested in, I might get it, but aside from that, I've already said no to those. I'm not buying even more variant Beys, and they seem to be releasing a lot of those, so I've already said no to those, but these I'm holding on to for now. But at some point, you know, if it gets really bad, if they're just constantly releasing 4 or even more and just not doing anything interesting, it might stop. But again, hopefully not, because I do like to at least check these out. So yeah, I think those are my entire thoughts on the Hasbro variants as of right now. We'll see how it goes. Again, as of the time I'm recording this, Wave 3 has not been announced, at least not, you know, specifics on it, so I don't know what's in there or what they'll have, but for now, that's everything. So yeah, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.